the Rolex Oyster Perpetual 41 millimeter. Today, that's what we're going to be talking about. It's a watch that's been around for a very long time. You can get it in plenty of different sizes with tons of variations. Stay tuned and learn all the details. Like I said, today we're going to be talking about the 41 millimeter Oyster Perpetual. That's going to be this bad boy right here. Now, without just going straight into that watch, I do feel like it would be very beneficial to our viewers to kind of discuss the history of the watch, the different variations, sizes, elements within, just so you can have a good idea of what this watch has to offer to everybody. So let's get right into it. So the term Oyster Perpetual, right? This is something that has a two-part meaning, right? We've got the oyster and we've got the perpetual. Well, before the Oyster Perpetual came into being, Rolex patented and created the Oyster case, just the Rolex Oyster, no perpetual. And so that was invented back in 1926, the Oyster case, and apparently Hans Wilsdorf decided that he coined the term oyster after trying to open an oyster at a dinner party and recognized how difficult it was, also needing special tools, and how similar that was to his new watch and how he had designed it. So in 1927, the Rolex Oyster, again, before the Oyster Perpetual, but the Oyster, the predecessor to this watch, was worn by a woman named Mercedes Glitza. She actually wore one of these watches as she became the first female to swim across the English Channel. Now, a few years later in 1931, they patented the automatic movement. They called it the Perpetual. This is where the second half of the name comes from. And this is, of course, the automatic self-winding feature that we're so accustomed to in today's watches. So again, this was really early in Rolex's history. This is something that is you're not going to find many watches out there today from that time period. But it set the standard and the baseline for what became most of Rolex's modern collection. You'll notice if you're checking out a Daytona, a Datejust, any of the other sport models, Submariners, Explorers, at the top, underneath where it says Rolex on the dial, you'll notice that it says Oyster Perpetual. Sometimes it'll say date, sometimes it'll say Cosmograph, it may have other things, but the base of the model comes from this, in the Oyster Perpetual. Now, the oyster, of course, refers to the water-resistant properties. It's tight as an oyster, no water is getting in or out. And perpetual has to do with that automatic self-winding movement. Now, this watch comes in a wide variety of sizes, but not all of them are still in production. So in 1964, they released the ladies version. And I guess before I should back up a little bit, because in 1950, that's the first documented appearance of the Oyster Perpetual. It was probably around before then, but there's not any documentation to be able to verify those claims. So word on the street is 1950s, we'll go with that. I'm sure we could argue about it for the rest of eternity since history is kind of dark in those periods. But in 1964, 14 years later, they released the 24 millimeter version of this watch for the ladies. Eventually, they ended up beefing that up to a 26 millimeter version. They have a 28 millimeter version, a 31, a 34, the traditional size of what used to be a men's watch, as well as a 36, still considered traditional, somewhat of a unisex watch. It's not uncommon to find a 36 millimeter watch on a lady's wrist nowadays here in the 20s. Of course, we're now talking about the 2020s, not the 1920s. They did in 2015 release the 39 millimeter version of the watch, and that had a 5-year production run until 2020 when they decided to launch the 41 millimeter. When they did that, they went ahead and discontinued the 39 millimeter, and some of the smaller models are no longer in production either. If you go to Rolex.com, you'll currently find a 28, a 31, a 34, a 36, and a 41 millimeter available to you. And of course, there's plenty of different dial configurations, colors, different sorts of, little perks, things that you can change about the watch to really make it unique. And I tried to pick watches that gave you a good general idea or overview of some differences that are available. You're not stuck with just a plain dial. You can see Where is it? I've got one over here that has concentric circles on the inside. Rather than having traditional baton markers at the hour indices, they actually use 5-minute increments instead of the hour markers, with of course the Arabic numerals for 3, 6, and 9 still being there. And of course they do also come, this is a smaller version, but it's got a white dial and they use Roman numeral hour markers with then white gold hour markers at the 3, 6, and 9. So I don't really want to get too deep into the different variations or varieties that are available, because there are a ton of them. Different colors, different styles, you name it. Just come check it out at SwissWatchExpo.com, see them on Rolex.com. They have plenty of choices for you. Now, if you start looking into the vintage category of these Oyster Perpetuals, you'll notice that, kind of pre-1980s, during the 80s rather, they phased out what was known as the acrylic crystal, the one that's made out of plastic. So any modern watch, all of the ones that you see here today, they all have a sapphire crystal. And that is something that continues on. But if you start going back into history, that is something that you're going to want to be aware of. At a certain point, you're going to cross that date line and you're going to notice that they have a little bit different configuration having an acrylic crystal. Now, Rolex decided to make a really keynote difference on the standard dial that comes from this watch, and that's going to be located at what we call the 3, 6, and 9 hour markers. You'll notice that instead of having just a thicker bar, a single bar at the 3, 6, and 9, they doubled it. You now have double bars at 3, 6, and 9. So if you're comparing watches and you're looking at them on a screen, for instance, like how we have all of our inventory on our website at SwissWatchExpo.com, one key feature you can look for is those double bars. If you see a Rolex Oyster Perpetual with double bars at 3, 6, and 9, you know it's going to be a 41 millimeter size. So come check out our selection at SwissWatchExpo.com, like the bell, hit and subscribe, and we hope to talk to you soon.